It's almost Christmas Day. This is Christmas Eve. I'm going to read this story called Santa Claus is Coming to Town. There's Santa, and he's got a list underneath there. He wants to make sure you're in the naughty or nice list. And this is about two boys and getting ready for Christmas. Santa Claus is coming to town. This is the story. Santa Claus is coming to town. And there's Santa Claus. He's getting ready, trying to look at his list. He has many important things to do. But one list says naughty and one says nice. He's keeping a list of who's naughty and who's nice. Santa Claus is coming to town. There he is. He's got his list. There's the naughty list and the nice. You want to be on the nice list. Santa Claus was looking over his lists of naughty and nice children. Most of them had been very good all year, but there were still a few kids that Santa was a little worried about, especially Sam and Mike. Santa asked his helper, Timothy the elf, how Sam and Mike were doing. "Well," said Timothy, "they try to be good, but they seem to have a hard time sometimes." "There are only 4 days until the big trip," said Santa Claus. "Keep an eye on them." So there are Sam and Mike. Sam and Mike were running into the kitchen. "It's 4 more days until Christmas," said Mike. "No," said Sam, "it's only 3. "It's 4, shouted Mike. "No, 3, cried Sam. "Boys," said their mother, "must you argue over everything? This time you're both right. There are 4 days left until Christmas if you count today as one of them. If you don't count today, then there are only 3. Sam and Mike went to the living room where their older sister, Katie, was playing. "I still say there are 4 days left until Christmas," said Mike. "Right, Katie?" "You two boys are always arguing," replied Katie. "Don't you know what happens to children who argue all the time? Santa knows all about how you two act. He knows whether you boys have been good or bad, so you'd better watch out, you two." "Gee," said Mike, "we should try to be careful. Okay, no more arguments. Let's go sledding." Sam and Mike walked down the street and passed Mr. Paulson's yard. There's Mr. Paulson. Mike wanted to sneak in and sled on the big hill there. "Mr. Paulson said he doesn't want anyone to sled on his front yard," replied Sam, "but maybe just this one time wouldn't hurt." But Mr. Paulson came out and saw them in his yard. "What did I tell you boys about sledding here?" he shouted from his door. He doesn't look very happy, does he? And they shouldn't have done that if he told them no. Meanwhile, Santa Claus was talking to Timothy. "What's the latest news on Sam and Mike?" he asked. Timothy shook his head and told Santa about Sam and Mike's argument and about the sledding in Mr. Paulson's yard. "Those boys do have a very hard time being good," said Santa. "What do they want for Christmas?" 2 elves held up a toy train and some skates that the boys wanted. "I sure hope I'll be able to deliver these toys to those boys," said Santa. At just about this time, Sam and Mike were on their way to the park. There they found some boys who were playing in the snow. They had chosen teams to see who could build the best snow forts. There they are, putting big snowballs together to make a fort. Mike and Sam decided to join in. Just then, Sam saw little Joey sitting by a tree away from the older boys. Joey looked like he had been crying. See, there's some tears in his eyes. Joey was sad because the older boys wouldn't let him help with their forts. They said he was too small. "Hey, Joey," said Sam, "Mike and I need someone just your size to reach those tough spots." The 3 of them set to work, with Mike and Sam lifting Joey up to pile the snow on the top. Their fort stood taller than the others. Soon the other teams were asking Joey to help them reach the high spots. Joey was as happy as could be. A few days later, Santa Claus was getting ready for his trip. Here's the sleigh and the reindeer and his big package of toys. Timothy, he called, what about Sam and Mike? I'm ready to pack their presents. Great news, Santa, said Timothy. He told Santa Claus about how Sam and Mike asked Joey to play with them. I knew they were good children, Santa said. Sam and Mike did the most important thing. They were kind to someone. That's what really counts. As Santa started his long trip, Sam and Mike were getting ready for bed. They had hung up their stockings by the chimney. They sat out cookies and milk in case Santa wanted a snack. After the boys were all tucked into bed, Mike was thinking about starting a big pillow fight. But just then Mike said, someone knows whether I'm being naughty or nice. And he also knows when we were sleeping or awake, said Sam. So let's go to sleep now. Late that night, as Santa put the boys' presents under the tree, he said quietly, well done, Mike and Sam. You were good for goodness sake. And that's the end. Santa Claus is coming to town.